Hello and welcome to this week's Hippie Hyena. So, we're back with Kaitlin Bennett. She's out with a microphone, annoying people. And, she's titled this video Pure Evil. Pure Evil. And I'm curious what somebody so, let's describe her as morally unusual as Kaitlin Bennett would classify as pure evil. What would constitute as pure evil for someone like that? Let's dig in and find out.
Do you want to redo that?
My TikTok?
Yeah, do you want to redo your TikTok?
Yeah, hold on.
Yeah, why didn't you just come ask to flip me off?
Oh, so hardly pure evil. It's just a kid. It's just a little kid who's making a TikTok, casually flipping off Kaitlin Bennett, which is probably the right thing to do if you see her in public. And then here she is, coming to harass that kid. I mean, I feel like the power dynamic is quite palpable here, where Kaitlin Bennett is like a sort of somewhat of a celebrity, and she's basically come over to harass or hassle a girl who quietly gave her the middle finger from a distance for a TikTok video. I mean, and that kind of sets up this whole video, really, that it's Kaitlin Bennett, a sort of established relative YouTube-ish celebrity-ish sort of X-list celebrity who has all the power in this situation, has the microphone, has the camera crew, against a little girl, basically. A little girl who she's labeling in the video title as pure evil. As pure evil. Isn't that blurring out her face? I'd be surprised if she wasn't under 18. She's certainly under 21. And here's Kaitlin Bennett putting her face on her channel and labeling her as pure evil.
Hey guys, you can go to patreon.com/Kaitlin Bennett to support my work. Do you want to flip me off now or later?
Now.
Awesome! You're so brave.
You're so pretty.
Well, thank you. You're pretty.
I don't like
you. You have natural beauty. See, the thing is, if I took my makeup off, I wouldn't be beautiful. But you are naturally beautiful, so you got this.
Really? I think if you take your makeup off, you would be beautiful.
I look like a little boy.
I think you would still be beautiful.
Well, I appreciate that. How do you go from flipping me off one second to being so sweet and nice the next?
Oh, well, I think like inside of you is like nasty and hateful, but like I feel like outside of you is beautiful.
Because even if it's only on some sort of instinctive level, this girl realizes that there's a difference between the political systems and ideologies that underlie people like Kaitlin Bennett and the individual of Kaitlin Bennett herself. And whilst Kaitlin Bennett might be a hateful, disgusting and depraved person, it doesn't mean that we need to be when we meet her. However, I would probably say that Kaitlin Bennett, for her behaviour, does deserve rudeness on a regular basis out and about. At the bare minimum, really, it kind of needs to be demonstrated that if people have incredibly antisocial views, behaviours, and they proselytise for incredibly antisocial things, then they don't get to take part in polite society. They shouldn't be able to. But it's quite something for a girl in this member of the public's position to give Kaitlin Bennett what she deserves, when Kaitlin Bennett is very assertive and has just basically surprised this girl who was just casually making a TikTok video.
Well, like, you're transphobic, you're pro-life, you're,
Being pro-life is nasty and hateful?
Yeah, I think it is.
How?
Well, I feel like it's like taking away like a woman's right to like her own bodily autonomy. So like I feel like that's a little hateful.
You know, conservatives always prefer to set up this sort of situation with an unprepared person on the street or wherever, in order to argue sort of complex issues like the abortionist stuff, because they never actually want to face like proper rigorous debate from proper people who want to debate them, you know, who've had chance to prepare, and usually who are over the age of 25. Why? Because they probably wouldn't do very well is the answer, and this is the best way that they've found to try and make their ideas seem sort of almost reasonable-ish. It sort of like makes me wonder, like, what is the purpose of Kaitlin Bennett's channel? It is propaganda, but sort of who is it aimed at? And I would argue who it's aimed at is essentially right-wingers who've been humiliated in sort of debates before, which is probably most of the sort of general public right-wingers when they express their insane opinions in public. It's probably likely that those opinions will be shot down and they'll probably be made to look stupid. That's probably quite a common occurrence for them. And so Kaitlin Bennett's channel is a sort of power fantasy pornography where they get to see something that basically doesn't really happen in real life, which is a conservative owning the libs with facts and logic. And by facts and logic, I mean some things they've dreamed up, but the other person can't Google because they've been ambushed on the street, and if you did look up, would be nonsense. And by lib, I mean anyone left of Goebbels who is like usually under the age of 25 and is surprised to be ambushed.
Is it hateful to stand up for people in the womb who don't even get the basic right to life?
Clumps of cells in the womb, not people.
You are a clump of cells. Every part of you is made up from clumps of cells.
So I'm like the same, like on the same level as a fetus.
You are on the same level as a human that is formed from conception, and you matter just as much as the person that's inside of a womb. You both matter equally. Your life matters, and so does theirs. Everybody's life matters because they have the inherent right to life. And I wish you would take that same energy of loving and being, I'm sure you think Black Lives Matter.
They do.
They do, and they matter in the womb. You do not have the right to end someone else's life. That's simple as enough.
But what if the life's like attached to you? Then it's technically like belongs to you.
So here we have the basic sort of two sides of this argument set up, and framed in such a way that benefits Kaitlin Bennett, of course, as that's what her job is in to set up these kind of situations. But the two sides are basically this. Kaitlin Bennett's side believes that the life begins at conception, and this girl believes that it doesn't, and that's essentially the argument that they're having. When really it doesn't matter, because nobody really knows when life begins. It's sort of a meaningless sort of idea. It's probably not a sort of hard and fast like point where there's no life then there is life. It's a confusing, blurry thing that's almost basically impossible to define. It's kind of a semantic issue more than anything else, and doesn't matter. What actually matters is, can you enforce that somebody else gives up a significant part of their lives to support the life of someone else in that kind of way? I would say not really. No, you can't. The only way of possibly doing it is by enforcing women to carry children to term, like basically imprisoning them and monitoring them continuously to make sure they don't do anything to harm the life, in inverted commas, of the baby they're incubating. Whatever. You can't do that. Like, the government can't intervene in that kind of way in people's lives. It's just none of their business. In a free society, you can't take over people's lives to that degree. It's just not on. That's really the issue. The issue is, can you overtake the bodily autonomy of your citizenry for whatever reason? And I would argue, no, you can't. But if you frame it in this kind of way, that it's like, oh, when does life begin, blah, 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 it's basically sort of impossible to say, and neither of them can be any more right than the other, and it just fundamentally comes down to what you believe, which is not very objective and can be skewed in any direction. And let's not forget that Kaitlin Bennett and her ilk don't give a flaming fart about people's lives. You know, she brought up Black Lives Matter. That's an argument against her position. Why does she only care about unborn fetuses' lives and not care one jot about what happens to them once they leave the womb? You know, if she cared, she'd be in favour of things like healthcare and programs to sort of help stop poverty and put people in education or whatever else, you know, but she's against those things. She only cares about people's, in inverted commas, people's lives up until the point, and only in the context of that it would allow the government to dictate the lives of women and what they want to do and take over their bodily autonomy. That's the only circumstance under which she cares about people's lives. And that basically reveals the fundamental hypocrisy of what her position is. That when she says she cares about lives in the womb, she doesn't. She does not. None of them do. Absolute nonsense.
Yeah, but like, see, some people, like, I obviously disagree with that, and I know a lot of people do, but like, I know a lot of people think that like life starts at conception, and I feel like what if you don't believe life starts at conception? Like, you should, like, if you don't believe that, then you have like a right to like.
If I don't believe that Black people are human, do I have the right to go out and hurt them?
No, because it's like...
No, because opinions and feelings don't determine personhood, and they don't determine if they can be committed against with acts of violence. That's your opinion, and your feeling does not determine if you can kill somebody.
That goes both ways though, doesn't it? This is the funny thing about Kaitlin Bennett's arguments in this video, that like everything she says could go both ways. Like it's basically a meaningless argument. Because either way, somebody's deciding on the personhood. I mean, if that is the focus of the abortion debate, either way, her feelings don't get to determine that that is a person, just as whoever's feelings don't get to determine that it isn't. Like, it just is essentially a meaningless nonsense. And the sort of idea of, like, comparing this issue to, like, Black Lives Matter is just so absurd, especially considering that Kaitlin Bennett doesn't even believe that Black Lives Matter. She doesn't even believe it. And when she's saying, like, to apply the same thoughts as Black Lives Matter to lives in the womb, maybe she should do the same thing in the opposite direction. Maybe she should take some of her thoughts towards people in the womb and apply them to actual non-debatable human beings who we all agree are human beings. Well, I mean, I'm not sure whether Kaitlin Bennett would agree that black people are human beings, at least perhaps not in the way that matters to her. And perhaps that is sort of really the problem, that she has absolutely no problem seeing a cluster of cells as a human being, but she does have a problem seeing brown people and poor people as human beings, and that kind of really sums it up, doesn't it? But that's the thing about the right wing, is they tend to view the world in these sort of abstracts. Like, the reason that they can support fetuses or cell clusters before they've become viable independently is because they're a sort of abstract hypothetical person. But the moment that it becomes an actual real life practical human being who has needs and, you know, problems that need to be dealt with, they're not interested in that. It's just in the same way that, like, the QAnon people are obsessed with saving, like, mole children from human trafficking and from democratic adrenochrome harvesting, as in imaginary children. But the moment they're asked to support real children who are really in a bad situation, they're not interested at all, because they're only interested in supporting the vulnerable insofar as it helps them to oppress people. That's all it is. They're only performatively concern trolling, pretending to be worried about vulnerable people because they know that that's a kind of instinct that a lot of people have. And if they can leverage that to create some sort of hellish fascist dystopia, then they'll use that just as much as they'll use anything, because they hop from ideology to ideology, belief to belief, as long as it supports their horrific, unpleasant agenda that not only would make our lives miserable, it would also make their lives miserable too if they were ever to achieve any of their goals. I mean, Kaitlin Bennett here is literally arguing for her own autonomy as a woman to be taken away. She's even argued for the women's vote to be taken away. That's how mad she is, and how little you should take anything they say seriously, really, because you should only take opinions seriously if they're coming from a place of informed consent, right? If someone's been sort of brainwashed or too dumb to understand anything and has sort of by proxy adopted these opinions because it's been enforced on them in some way, then you're not really dealing with the organ grinder, you're dealing with a monkey. And that's the thing about right-wing opinions, is that they are impossible to hold with informed consent. The very nature of being informed would mean you would never consent to them. So the fact that someone has them means they have not informedly consented to having them. Anyway, I hope you're having a good time, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Hippie Hyena out. Goodbye.